Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into something that's been buzzing everywhere. It's all planned for the end of March. What does that mean? What's happening? Trust me, you don't want to miss this because things are about to get really interesting. So grab a snack, sit back, and let's get into it. This is a slow motion suicide of the Democratic Party. Why is the Democratic Party losing support faster than at any point in modern history? Is this a temporary political shift, or is something deeper at play? Something that signals an irreversible collapse. This video explores the insights of historian and political analyst Victor Davis Hanson, whose analysis reveals why the party isn't just struggling, it's actively destroying itself. Hanson argues that these aren't just isolated missteps, they are symptoms of a party losing control, both politically and culturally. But how did the Democrats get here? How did a party that once claimed to represent the working class turn into one that's hemorrhaging voter support? To understand, we need to go back to the beginning of this collapse. To grasp what's happening, we must first examine how the Democratic Party lost the trust of the public. The Democratic Party is facing a crisis, one that, according to Victor Davis Hanson, is largely self-inflicted. And yet, instead of recalibrating their strategy, they seem determined to double down on the very policies that are pushing voters away. Hanson argues that this decline stems from a fundamental disconnect between party leadership and the general public. The leadership fails to recognize that most Americans simply want to reduce the size of government. Americans aren't asking for more bureaucracy, more regulations, or more ideological purity tests. They want competent stability and leadership that prioritizes their economic and social well-being. But the Democratic leadership appears unwilling or unable to course correct. Instead, they continue promoting policies that fuel voter resentment. Ballooning government programs, wasteful spending on taxpayer-funded media, and the aggressive expansion of DEI initiatives. These aren't just ideological missteps. They're costly, and the public is footing the bill. Hanson sees this as a slow motion collapse, with no indication that the party intends to stop its downward trajectory. They're down to 31%, he notes, and I guess they want to go down to 20%, and they will get there if they keep this up. The question remains, can the Democratic Party reverse course, or is this decline irreversible? Only time will tell, but for now, the signs point to a party in crisis. One that's struggling to reconnect with the very people it claims to represent. In their attempt to maintain ideological purity, the Democratic Party is alienating the very people they need to win elections. For years, Democrats have justified their policies as necessary for progress, but the backlash is growing across demographics, income levels, and political affiliations. Even traditional Democratic voters are starting to ask, where is all this money going and why does none of it seem to benefit the average American? This problem extends beyond just policy, it's about perception. The party's increasing fixation on ideological battles makes them appear more invested in symbolic victories than in solving real problems. While everyday Americans struggle with inflation, crime, and economic uncertainty, Democratic leadership seems focused on issues that feel detached from reality. One of the most revealing examples of this misstep is the backlash against Elon Musk, a figure once celebrated by progressives but now targeted as an enemy of the state. To understand how deep this disconnect runs, we need to examine why Democrats have turned on one of the most influential innovators of our time. Just a few years ago, Elon Musk was a darling of the left, a visionary leading the charge toward a green energy future. Tesla was proof that innovation could drive environmental progress, and Musk himself was praised as a modern-day genius. But today, he's enemy number one. Victor Davis Hanson explains why. He's an apostate, and they're furious at him because Tesla and his wealth were used on their behalf. In other words, Musk was once aligned with their vision, and that made him useful. But the moment he stopped playing by their rules, questioning government control, pushing back against censorship, and speaking freely on issues they wanted to control, he became a political threat. One of the biggest turning points was his acquisition of X, formerly Twitter. The platform, once a stronghold for left-leaning narratives, suddenly became a space where political discourse was no longer filtered through ideological gatekeepers. Musk's commitment to free speech and transparency made it impossible for the Democratic establishment to control the narrative like they once did. But Musk's role in shaping American industry and policy is not unprecedented. America has always relied on bold, innovative industry leaders in times of crisis. During World War II, the U.S. government turned to industrialists like Henry Ford and William Kaiser, figures who weren't elected or confirmed by Congress yet transformed the entire war effort through sheer expertise and innovation. They were handed the reins of war production and their contributions were pivotal. They weren't elected and they weren't confirmed by Congress, but they were geniuses at what they did. The government understood that practical problem solvers, not bureaucrats, drive real progress. But today, the left sees Elon Musk's influence as dangerous. Instead of celebrating his contributions to technology, space exploration, and energy, they attack him for refusing to conform. His independence threatens the Democratic Party's growing reliance on corporate allies who push their political agenda. The backlash against Musk isn't just about him, it's about the Democratic Party's growing disconnect from real-world innovation and economic reality. Their response to Musk exposes their fear of losing control, not just over the media, but over the broader American economy. However, Musk is just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. The Democratic Party's struggles aren't just domestic, they're global. Their approach to foreign policy has alienated allies, wasted billions, and led to a growing backlash against American influence. Under their leadership, the United States has poured billions of dollars into international programs that don't strengthen alliances or improve diplomacy. Instead, these programs attempt to impose a progressive ideological agenda on foreign nations. Victor Davis Hanson calls this cultural imperialism. The U.S. isn't just engaging in diplomacy or economic aid, it's trying to reshape the values of other societies, often in ways that directly conflict with their traditions and beliefs. We're spending a lot of money to go into traditional fundamentalist societies in the Middle East and Asia. They're really cultural imperialists. This isn't winning America any favors. Instead of fostering goodwill, these ideological interventions are alienating foreign governments and ordinary citizens. Leaders in conservative regions, especially in the Middle East, Africa, and parts of Asia, see these efforts as arrogant and unwanted. They view them as an attack on their national identity, not as an act of goodwill. One of the most glaring examples of this failed strategy is the push for DEI-friendly education programs in deeply traditional societies. The U.S. has spent millions on initiatives that attempt to inject American-style progressivism into school curriculums in regions where social and cultural norms are vastly different. Hanson compared this to 19th century British imperialism, when colonial rulers attempted to force their enlightened values onto people who never asked for them. These efforts have backfired spectacularly. Many countries that once relied on the U.S. as a strategic partner are now seeking alternatives. Some are turning toward China and Russia, nations that offer economic partnerships without ideological conditions. Even Elon Musk has weighed in on the issue, criticizing these wasteful programs have drawn criticism from figures like Elon Musk, who argues that eliminating them would not only save billions, but also improve America's standing abroad. So when Elon says get rid of it, it would be better for foreign relations, I think he's right. The Democratic Party's foreign policy has become an expensive, tone-deaf disaster. While this backlash continues to grow overseas, another storm is brewing at home, one fueled by the overreach of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. Americans are increasingly rejecting the ideological agendas being pushed in their own institutions. The backlash against DEI is reaching a breaking point. At its core, DEI was marketed as a continuation of the civil rights movement, a way to correct historical injustices and ensure equal opportunities. But as Victor Davis Hanson explains, it has since mutated into something entirely different. Affirmative action was created during the civil rights era to address the historic racism and oppression faced by Black Americans. The idea was simple because African Americans had endured centuries of slavery, segregation, and systemic discrimination. Some level of corrective action was necessary to level the playing field, but that was the 1960s. By the time the Obama administration took power, the concept of affirmative action had been dramatically expanded. Instead of focusing on a historically oppressed minority, DEI became a catch-all framework for a broad coalition of racial and social groups, many of whom never experienced the historical discrimination affirmative action was meant to address. And that's where the problems began. Hansen highlights the unintended consequences of this shift. Suddenly, even wealthy non-white individuals were being prioritized for DEI benefits, while lower-income white Americans, many of whom were struggling financially, were shut out. How does somebody who comes across the border from Wakanda on the first day claim that he's been a victim of insidious American racism? The original intent of affirmative action was to address specific injustices. DEI, on the other hand, has become a bureaucratic weapon that divides people into categories of oppressors and oppressed, often with no logic behind it. Hansen doesn't just criticize DEI for being unfair, he argues that it's fundamentally unsustainable. A system built on race-based preferences instead of merit and economic need is bound to collapse. This person we are hiring because we want to be diverse actually has more money than the people who are being excluded. And that's the core issue. DEI isn't solving inequality, it's creating new forms of it. The problem is when an ideology is based on division, it eventually collapses on itself. And right now we're witnessing the early signs of a full-scale revolt against DEI and the political elites who pushed it. For years, the Democratic Party and its corporate allies promoted DEI as an unquestionable necessity. It was framed as progress, as DEI was once framed as the next step toward a more just and equitable society. But now the backlash has begun. Polls show that Americans across racial and political lines are rejecting race-based hiring and quotas. What was once seen as a well-intentioned initiative has become a bureaucratic monster, favoring ideology over competence and fairness. Victor Davis Hanson highlights key moments when public trust in DEI programs started to erode. The Harvard admissions lawsuit exposed how Asian students were actively discriminated against to maintain racial balance. Applicants with top scores and achievements were rejected simply because they didn't fit the DEI narrative. The Supreme Court ruled against Harvard, but the damage to public trust was already done. FAA hiring policies also made headlines when it was revealed that air traffic controllers were selected based on diversity quotas rather than merit and experience. This raised serious concerns about public safety. Shouldn't the most qualified person be guiding planes in the sky? Corporate America is quietly backing away from DEI. Major companies that once bragged about their diversity initiatives are now laying off DEI departments. Even liberal CEOs have cut DEI budgets, realizing it's a financial liability rather than an asset. Hansen notes that even former supporters of DEI are beginning to recognize the failure of these policies. The reality is simple. People are tired of being lectured to. They're tired of being told that merit doesn't matter. They're tired of policies that prioritize checking a diversity box over hiring the most qualified person for the job. This wasn't the equality that was promised. It was something else entirely. A power play by elites who thought they could reshape society without consequences. They've really shot themselves in the foot. And this is not going to go well. They're just getting angrier because they're used to being coddled. The biggest sign of change? It's not just conservatives rejecting DEI, even Trump's critics are starting to come around. Once staunch never-Trumpers are quietly reconsidering their stance. Intellectuals, business leaders, and even some Democrats are beginning to admit maybe Trump was right about this all along. For years, Trump's critics, especially within the academic, corporate, and political elite, dismissed him as a reckless populist. But now something unexpected is happening. The very people who once ridiculed his policies are quietly admitting that he was right about a lot of things. When I was on campus not too long ago, the Stanford campus, a professor I know, who I would say is a moderately anti-Trumper, maybe even a never-Trumper, came up to me and whispered, "Wow, the end of DEI is actually not that bad, is it?" This wasn't an isolated case. Across universities, boardrooms, and political circles, moderates who once opposed Trump are beginning to reconsider, not because they've suddenly become his biggest fans, but because they see the alternative and they don't like it. What they're seeing is undeniable. The failures of DEI, the collapse of public trust in institutions, and the Democratic Party's economic mismanagement have pushed many toward Trump's policies, even if they won't admit it publicly. And it's not just happening in the US. On the global stage, Trump's economic approach is gaining surprising support. Victor Davis Hanson recalls a revealing moment at Davos, the annual gathering of the world's political and economic elite. The questions were, "Are you sure you can send us liquid natural gas? We need it in Europe." Or, this sounds great, but when will it start? The same world leaders who once dismissed Trump's energy policies, trade negotiations, and tax reforms are now seeing the consequences of their own economic stagnation. While Europe grapples with an energy crisis and China expands its influence, Trump's policies, once branded as extreme, suddenly look like common sense. The truth is, the intellectual elite is pragmatic. They may hate Trump's style, but they can't ignore results. Whether it's economic growth, energy independence, or border security, the contrast between Trump's America and Biden's America is becoming impossible to ignore. Even those who still dislike Trump find themselves reluctantly acknowledging that his policies worked. The shift isn't happening all at once, and it's certainly not happening loudly. But behind closed doors, the tide is turning. While this shift is underway, the Democratic Party is facing its biggest crisis yet. Their political foundation is crumbling, and the counter-revolution is picking up speed. America is at a turning point. The political and cultural upheaval of the last decade is reaching critical mass. As Victor Davis Hanson puts it, all of a sudden, people said, you know what? I'm not going to change the date of the French Republic. I'm not going to tear down statues. I'm not going to behead anybody anymore. And the people who did it are going to account for this. And the whole country rose up within a matter of weeks. For years, the media, Hollywood, and academia held an iron grip on what could be said, what was acceptable, and who was allowed to have a voice. They dictated the narrative, suppressing dissent through corporate pressure, social ostracization, and outright censorship. But that grip is slipping. Alternative voices, independent media, podcasters, and everyday Americans who refuse to be silenced are challenging the establishment. The rise of figures like Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, and independent journalists has dismantled the illusion of control once enjoyed by legacy institutions. At the heart of this shift is a simple demand: competence over ideology. Americans are tired of leaders who prioritize wokeness over results, slogans over solutions, and activism over governance. And love him or hate him, Trump is the only leader openly challenging this system. The next election will be a historic moment. It will decide whether the counter-revolution solidifies into lasting change or whether the Democratic Party manages to cling to power by shifting narratives and rewriting history. One thing is clear: the political landscape is changing fast, and this is just the beginning. If you want to understand the full impact of this shift and what it means for America's future, check out our next videos. There's more in-depth analysis ahead, so stay tuned. So there you have it. It's all planned for the end of March. Whether it's a big reveal, a major event, or something completely unexpected, one thing's for sure: March is going to be a month to remember. What do you think is going to happen? Drop your theories in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay curious.